morning, everyone. We hope you had a fantastic day yesterday. It's been a little bit drizzly here overnight, so we've relocated inside the barn, and it was just raining, so if you hear any rain noise, we do apologise for that.
Indeed, but we have to say this is the first time in 5.5 weeks that we've had to take shelter from any rain. So here in the south of England, we've been blessed with what has been a very, dry and often sunny spring. So we can't complain at all. And today we're going to show you a number of very cute animals. We thought we'd start with perhaps the cutest of all.
Oh, yeah.
Unusual for me to use that word, but when it comes to Nancy, look at that. Nance, of course, is a domestic dog, but we've got one more domestic
We've got another
animal.
Domestic animal.
Young domestic animal is very attractive. And then some absolute beauties at the end.
It's full of cuteness today. You are in for an absolute treat. But I do have some breaking news. You don't know this.
Okay.
I've refrained from telling you. So, a little bit of an Osprey update. Now, it's not what you think. Don't get your hopes up. Unfortunately, the male has still not yet returned. Males do tend to arrive first back from their migration pathway. So, I'm starting to call this LS7,
yeah.
So, but there has been a development.
Go on, what is it?
So yesterday, our resident female, off she went. She flew off of her nest, and she was caught on another nest site.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So we have footage of this, and then look at this photo. This is an unidentified osprey next to her. We do not know whether it's male or female. But she is there with another osprey.
I can't blame her.
No.
I can't blame her. She's been hanging around that, albeit very picturesque nest, but with no action there. She's roaming.
She's been very patient. She's waited a long time, and she's not there at the moment, so we couldn't show you live osprey. She's off potentially canoodling with whoever this other individual is.
Well, let's hope it's a male.
Let's hope it's a male. Fingers crossed for that. So from that, on to our Sound Approach UK, our bird song of the day that we've been following on Twitter. Today is a bit of a different one. This is one that we don't see in the UK. It's one that we see in parts of Northern Africa, Saudi Arabia, and things like this. It is a greater hoopoo lark, quite an unusual bird with a very unusual song. Have a listen to this. Oh, you know what?
I quite like that.
It hurts my ears a little bit. I feel like it's like when you've got something electrical that's gone slightly wrong.
It sounds a bit like the start of an OMD record in the 1980s, to be quite honest with you. I quite like the electronic, the primitive electronic sound of it. I have seen hoopoo lark. I saw one in Spain many, many years ago when they were classed as a great rarity there, and everyone else got very excited about it. And more recently, I was fortunate to see another one, but I don't know much about them, to be honest with you.
No, well, I know on the ground they've got very kind of camouflage. They're very brown and they're very mottled. They don't look like anything too splendid. However, when they're in flight and they open those wings out, they've got very, very distinctive white and black markings, which is quite special, actually, isn't it?
It is. Okay, hoopoo lark's a little bit niche, that bird, actually, a little bit niche. Okay, let's go for our quiz. So Phil Barnett has sent us these sort of graphic, abstract designs. Now, what is this one? Looks a bit like a Damien Hirst, or Damien Hirst when he was lacking in imagination one day. But this is an organism which occurs in the UK, and it's certainly very, very famous. So what do you think that is? Let us know, and we'll see if we got the answer right at the end. Now, so far in our little cast, we've been trying to cover as many different things as possible. We've been doing bird song. We've been doing things that you can make and do. We've done wildlife gardening on a number of occasions, and that's proved very popular. We've done bird song in the field, actually, with Gary Moore. We haven't touched on photography yet, but one thing that we really definitely wanted to touch upon was nature writing. Nature writing is enjoying a bit of a renaissance at the moment. There was a time, I imagine, let's say to the late 60s, 70s and 80s, where not too many people were turning their typewriters to focus on nature, but now lots of people are. None more so than the remarkable Stephen Moss. Now, I've known Stephen Moss for a number of years. He's a brilliant naturalist, lives down in Somerset, and he's written a huge number of books, all of them, I have to say, pretty good. This is one of my favourites. He co-wrote this one with Brett Westwood, and it's an anthology of all the tweet of the days that are on Radio 4. And the reason I like this book is it's beautifully illustrated as well. It's got some fantastic illustrations in. So that one's worth getting if you're into that. Stephen's not only writing creatively, he's written lots of textbooks which are really useful to people like myself. So this one, Mrs. Moreau's Warbler, tells us where all the birds got their names. Good stuff there. And then this one here, Wild Hares and Hummingbirds. He's written a number of books of this ilk. The most recent book he's written, so I'm losing it a bit with the rain, the most recent book that he's written is The Accidental Countryside, which is on sale now, and you can get that from Wild Sounds Books. Stephen is also a teacher at Bath Spa University, where he teaches MAs in travel and nature writing. I'm really pleased to say that he's joining us in the dry from Somerset today to tell us all about turning your wildlife diaries into something a bit more substantial. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning, Chris and Megan. How are you this morning?
Well, we're all right. We're all right, but we're a little bit down. It's not very nice just out there. 2 meters away, you wouldn't want to be where we were.
Well, guess what? Your lovely Fabian has made me sit outside, and it's raining here too. So don't worry about that. No, but it's lovely being here, you know, as where you are. I'm very lucky. I live in the countryside, and it's gorgeous. But yeah, I'm here today to talk to you about nature writing. But first, I just wanted to thank you guys for doing such a brilliant job with this fantastic broadcast, because, you know, a lot of people are really feeling stuck at the moment. They're stuck where they are at home, and they're finding it very hard to feel connected with nature. So I know you've really been helping people do that. So that's fantastic. So thank you very much. And it's great to be part of this. If there's one very small silver lining to this crisis, I suppose it is the fact that we can reconnect with nature where it matters, on our doorstep. And I know you and I, Chris, have been very lucky, and Megan as well, to travel to various exotic places to listen to hoopoe larks in North Africa and that sort of thing. But there is nothing as good as wildlife on your doorstep. And the irony of this great, terrible crisis we're going through is that we can both observe it and listen to it and get to know it, but also write about it, which is what I'm here to talk about today. And the simplest thing you can do, and really everyone should be doing this anyway, is to keep a nature diary. If you keep a nature diary, just keep a few notes of what you see. You can jot it down in note form. You can just do a list of species, but maybe go a bit further than that and just put in a little bit of extra, perhaps where you saw the bird or the flower or the butterfly, what it was doing, perhaps a few notes. So I'm going to give you a quick example, actually, from the very first day I moved down to Somerset 14 years ago. And this is very simple stuff. And it was written, I think, a day or so afterwards. And this is not a piece of nature writing. This is just my diary. Just says, July 19th, when we arrived, was the hottest day of the year. The few hours before dark produced a dozen species, including green woodpecker and great spotted woodpecker. House sparrow and greenfinch were also on the feeders. Sparrows congregated on the bushes, and a constant procession of swallows and house martins passed overhead, heading westwards into the prevailing wind. So what I was doing there really was just trying to keep a note so that now, 14 years later, I can visualize what it's like to remember that first day here. Very hot day, seeing the swallows. I'd never seen swallows where I lived in London. It didn't get swallows over the house, so didn't get woodpeckers in the garden, didn't actually get sparrows. So all that was very exciting. These are not rare birds, these are, you know, but they matter, and they matter because they're on our doorstep. So yeah, keep a nature diary. Now, since this lockdown began, I've been keeping a nature diary by basically in my garden, but also when I go on my daily walk. I go round the back of my house. I'm very lucky in that we've got a sort of area of hedgerows and lanes and fields. It's just far enough to take our dog Rosie for a walk. It means that I can cycle around there. I'm fitter than I've been for quite a long time, actually, and I think the dog is astonished that she's getting so many walks from me and my children. And when I do that, I keep a note of what I'm seeing. I actually use this. I use a little handheld digital tape recorder. I can't write notes because I can't read my own writing. So it doesn't work for me. So what I do is I use this little digital handheld recorder. They're very cheap, very easy to get, and you can just talk into it. And then when you get back and listen to it, you've got something as a basis to then write about. Why keep a diary? Well, wherever you live, there's going to be wildlife. And actually, the irony of keeping a nature diary is, of course, is years later, sometimes you realise that, Brett Westwood said this, my colleague and our friend, that you realise that things that used to be really common are no longer common, and things that used to be very rare, like buzzards, ravens, where I live, didn't see a raven for the first year I was here, now they're everywhere. So, you know, it helps you, again, keep that. But it also is something that you can turn into a piece of writing. And again, I'm just going to read a very brief piece from a piece I wrote about a month after I kept that first diary. I wrote this for The Guardian. And this is now turning those notes into something a bit more, I suppose, a bit more permanent for someone to read, rather than just for me to read, which is a diary is for. The very first bird I heard chirping away in its usual manner was a house sparrow. Moments later, the leader of an endless procession of swallows flew low overhead, its wings almost skimming the roof. Sights and sounds we'll be getting used to in the coming years at our new home on the Somerset Levels. We'd chosen to move on the hottest day of the hottest month since records began. The following week saw an unbroken run of clear blue skies, which were ideal in the occasional moments between tidying, cooking and cleaning to start off my new garden list. And then I went on to write about the sparrows and how scarce they used to be and how they were surprisingly common here. So I think that next step is quite difficult for a lot of people. I think they feel that they're okay about keeping a diary for themselves, but when it comes to writing, you're putting yourself out there, whether you're doing it on a blog or whether you're getting it published somewhere. It's quite a big step, but don't worry, it's something that anyone can do. The key thing about writing is I think most people who write because they have to. It's like if you are a musician, you know, I'm hopeless at music and sport, but I can understand that if you are passionate and if you're good at those things, you want to do it. And I think the same is true of writing. But writing's not just about the mechanics of writing. I think people often think that that's what it's about. And it's like that old story that people say fishing isn't called catching. If it were about catching, it would be called catching. Fishing is this process that is all about being there. And you might not catch any fish, but by the end of the day, you've still enjoyed being in nature. And I think you know this, Chris, as well, don't you? That nature is, you know, and writing about nature isn't about necessarily seeing something very rare or spectacular. It's just about taking it in. It's also about going out into the field, going out into your backyard, going out into where you're doing your exercise now, even if it's a city or in the country or wherever you live, and looking and especially listening and touching and feeling and smelling. And the most important thing is then taking these notes about something that matters to you. Because if it matters to you and you write about it, someone else is going to enjoy reading it. And so that's all you need. You need a notebook or a digital recorder or your smartphone. You need a place to write about, and you need an open mind. Now then, when you get back, don't write straight away. Let it sink in. Wordsworth used to talk about writing was emotion recollected in tranquility. So it's about coming home, finding somewhere quiet, sitting down, listening to you or writing out your notes, and then write something. And just write, just do it. Don't edit yourself. Don't think, oh, that's not very good, because it's fine. Get it out there. Get it on paper, type it up, whatever you do, longhand, on a word processor, or whatever, however you do it. And then just leave it. Maybe 24 hours later, come back, read it out loud. That's the absolute key. When you read something out loud, you notice the words that don't work. You notice the bits that don't work. Read it to your partner or your friend or your children or one of your parents, you know, whoever you're self-isolating with, you know, or ring someone up if you're on your own and read it to them and ask them for criticism. Usually your close relatives will be very, very harsh on you. That's fine. That's good, because that will make you think, how can I please them? And then when they do say, oh, I thought that was really good, that's lovely. It doesn't happen very often, but it's nice when it does. And then finally, just use simple words and phrases, vary the length of your sentences. There's a lot of tips, and I'll post these on Twitter later. Say something interesting. Show us where you are. Don't just tell us stuff. Show us what it's like to be in the place you are. Don't worry about writing about the commonplace, because that's what's interesting. And as I say, just do it. And if you do that, I promise you, you look back on it a few years later, you'll have a piece of writing. And even if you haven't put it out there, although I would say try to put it out on a blog, you know, post it on Twitter, anything. But if you do that, you will remember, particularly this period now, this weird time we're going through, you will look back and you will have something special. And to me, that is the most important thing about writing, that in the end, although you're writing for readers, you're also writing for yourself. So I hope that's helpful. As I say, I'll post some stuff on Twitter later. Thanks again, Chris and Megan, for doing such a great job with all this.
Stephen, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
A lot of people, I think, feel that they probably can't write because they didn't do very well at English and associated subjects at school. I mean, I got a C at O level. I wasn't particularly interested in English at school. I was into sciences, very obviously. And then I effectively sort of thought when I got to my mid-20s, I need to sort of teach myself to write. And it is something that through reading and practicing writing, you can get better at later in life. You don't need to have a qualification in any writing, do you?
Absolutely. Now, I'll give you an example. The lovely Gary Moore, who you've had on twice now, I think, on your wonderful thing, dear friend of mine and yours. Gary left school without any qualifications. He was, as he told me the other day, he was more or less functionally illiterate. He taught himself. He went back to college and learned about science. But when he does those wonderful pieces for Springwatch, when he talks, he's writing. He happens to be saying it, but he's thought through what he's going to say. And he has, he's articulate and he is passionate and he cares about what he's doing. And Gary would say, I'm not someone who learned to write at school. One of the biggest problems at school is they teach you how to write the wrong way. My kids were taught you have to put lots of adjectives in. You get special marks for extra adjectives. No, you don't. Take them out. And people try to write, and I think this is a real problem for people who did struggle at school. They actually think that proper writing has to be complicated. It has to use long words. It's the complete opposite. Use short words, keep it simple, short sentences. And as I say, if you read it out, it then comes across as you would be saying it to someone. And that is the secret of good writing. It's not about long words and fancy grammar.
But the key thing, surely, in creative writing, in your writing, very often when I read it, I can see very clearly an emotional connection. That's what you're getting across. It's not about necessarily the words. It's the broader picture that they paint, which tells me about how you feel.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you've put your finger on it there, Chris, and your book as well, Fingers in the Sparkle Jar, did that so brilliantly. I didn't pick that as one of my 3 books because I thought that would be being a bit too nice to you, but it's certainly in my, up there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's about how you feel and if you care about nature in your garden and your local patch and you write about it, that matters. It matters to you, and it will then matter to other people reading it. Someone local might read it and say, gosh, I had no idea that creature was here. It might be, as you know, it might be something very common. People have been seeing all sorts of things posting on Twitter that I struggle to identify, like bee flies. I'm not very good on all those ones. And it also makes someone start to look, if they read your writing about a place, but it is absolutely about how you feel and whether you care. And a woman said to me, she came up to me and said, I really like your book, Wild Hares and Hummingbirds. It was so easy to read. And then she stopped herself and said, oh, I'm terribly sorry. That's not the right thing to say to a proper writer, is it? And she turned red. And I said, no, it's a lovely thing to say. Of course it should be easy to read. And I'm really pleased if it is, because if it isn't easy to read, you haven't done it right, frankly. And I think, writing is, if you're passionate about it, but give it a go. If you have never tried it, just, as the famous sports shoe manufacturer says, just do it.
Exactly. Okay, we asked you for 3 recommendations of nature books which are favourites of yours. So give us those. Tell us what you think we should be picking up and reading when we've got a little bit more time on our hands, like we have at the moment.
Yeah, well, there are so many great books out there. I could have picked yours. I could have picked Helen MacDonald's H is for Hawk. I could have picked some old classics like Ring of Bright Water, Tarka the Otter. The ones I came up with were these. It's Patrick Barkham's The Butterfly Isles. Patrick is I'm afraid all the people who I've picked are good friends of mine, but that's the nature of nature writing. We like each other. Patrick is a journalist on The Guardian. He was in his 30s. He felt he'd lost touch with nature, something he knew about as a child. And he did a very simple book. It's a quest to see all Britain's butterflies. I won't tell you if he succeeded, but it's a lovely book. And what I like about Patrick is that he doesn't pretend he knows everything. He says, I'm not a butterfly expert, so he goes and finds people who are and meets them. And he writes about people. And I think that's a really important part of nature writing. The second one is Rebirding from Ben McDonald. Benedict McDonald. Ben is a young guy who I've known for a long time now, since he was in his early 20s. This is a passionate, polemical book telling us how we get nature back. And I think it's an absolutely brilliant book. It's a practical guide to restoring birds and the rest of wildlife in Britain. And I think, it's a tremendous book. And the third one is one of mine and your favourites, because it says a great naturalist on the cover, Chris Packham, is the wonderful John Lister Kay, a dear friend of mine up in Scotland. I think, like a lot of older nature writers, I think, unfortunately, a lot of older nature writers are slightly overlooked at the moment, because people say, oh, we need to, and it's good. I really like encouraging young people doing stuff, and we are, and that's brilliant. And there are some fantastic young writers out there. Dara McAnulty's just done his book at 16, I think, which is fantastic. But John is, I suppose, they call it new nature writing. John is old nature writing, but it is a fantastic memoir of his very bizarre and eventful life. And it's called The Dun Cow Rib, and it's just a lovely book. But there are so many out there. There are young writers, there are writers from different ethnic backgrounds, there are men and women writing wonderful stuff now. So just go and, pick something, and you'll probably enjoy it.
Stephen, thanks ever so much. That was absolutely fantastic. And if we do get anyone, writing things in, we'll send them off to you, and we can then do something about it on our little broadcast.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
I would love to do that. And please, if people want to get in touch with me on Twitter, if they want some advice, I can point them in the direction of various things they can do and things to read. Because, this is as the group of nature writers, like naturalists, we actually like each other, we care about each other, and we want to involve more people in this. And that's really the key to what we're all doing, isn't it?
Indeed it is.
I'm going to start an nature diary. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Stephen, that's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. Stephen Moss, one of the most generous people I've always known. He's always been a very, very, very kind and supportive helper for me. Now, we've mentioned nature writing earlier in the week. There was a competition running, and here is Lucy McRobert to tell you a little bit more about it.
Hi everyone, my name's Lucy McRobert, and I've teamed up with some of my favourite nature writers and champions to try and find the UK's next top wildlife storyteller. It's called the Nature on Your Doorstep competition, and we want kids and teenagers to send us their short stories inspired by the wildlife right outside of their homes. It could be up in the sky, it could be in your garden, it could be on your street, whatever wildlife works for you. We've got 3 age categories, each with some amazing prizes, including binoculars, experience days, books, vouchers, healthy hampers, and most importantly, all of our winners will be published in BBC Wildlife magazine. How incredible is that? Check out 365dayswild.com for more information and to find out how to take part, or tune in on Friday when Stephen Moss, who is one of our judges, will be chatting to Megan and Chris. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Such a fantastic thing to do, to get involved with, put your pen to paper and enter a competition, send your abstracts to Stephen Moss, get his thoughts on it. I mean, it's a brilliant way to spend your time and help you observe the environment around you more, because when you're really looking and you're thinking about, putting down what you're seeing, you see more things.
And you can write anywhere at any time. I mean, I chose to write a book once because I didn't have any time to otherwise engage with nature. I couldn't paint it, I couldn't photograph it, and I was constantly on the move, in hotel rooms, middle of the night. If you've got a laptop with you or a blank piece of paper and a biro, you can be creative. So it's something for any time, which is really
any time and anyone. So up next, we've got a clip from Ben Porter. Ben is a fantastic naturalist. He's recently been in the Azores studying lots of different petrels, shearwaters and different seabirds. He spent months there on this island doing this. I'm very envious. He had a fantastic time. But he's back at home now, isolating with his family in Wales. And he sent in this very, very important clip. We've been talking to you about birds on our feeders, but it's very important we maintain these feeders to help not just the longevity of the feeders, but also the health of the birds as well. So have a look at this.
Hi everyone, hello from North Wales, here on the Same Peninsula, where we've had our first cloudy day in about a week, I think. It's been absolutely beautiful these last few days, and really great weather for getting out in the garden, where I've been spending a lot more time than I otherwise would normally do, as I'm sure many of you have. And it's been fantastic to see a real variety and amazing diversity of wildlife and bird life that inhabits even just our small garden here. One of the things that's been absolutely fantastic to see is really good numbers of chaffinches and greenfinches on our garden bird feeding station. Now you may just about be able to hear a greenfinch calling in the background actually. There's been a male singing right above me here in the bushes just now. Now, many of you, I'm sure, are aware that chaffinches and greenfinches are two species that have been facing really severe declines in recent years, with greenfinches declining by about 60% in the last 10 years alone. 60%. It's pretty worrying stuff. And chaffinches also following suit at the moment with about a 30% decrease between 2007 and 2018. Now, there's a number of factors, I'm sure, involved with this decline that we've been seeing, but one of the main threats that has been identified is that of a disease called trichomoniasis. It's a bit of a tongue twister, that one. This disease is an infectious disease caused by a parasite and is unfortunately spread primarily at bird feeding stations themselves, gardens. And so I thought this would just be a pertinent time to raise awareness of this issue. And as many people I'm sure are at home getting their bird feeders up and encouraging others to feed birds as well and enjoying that as well, as we should be, but also how we can help tackle this issue and really put a stop to these declines if we can. And so there's a lot of resources online, particularly on the BTO website, the British Trust for Ornithology. And there's some quite simple measures that we can take to try and reduce the spread of this disease in our gardens. And so one thing is just exercising fairly good hygiene practices with your feeders. So cleaning them with an appropriate disinfectant every couple of weeks, and trying not to let big mounds of seed and things build up beneath the feeders, clearing that away. Is that, you know, you can often see birds feeding around in there and there's quite a high risk for transmission there. And then also having a couple of feeding stations within your garden that spreads out the bird populations within your garden, a bit like social distancing really, to reduce the risk of spread. And if you do have a big enough garden to have a couple of feeding stations, even rotating the use of these so that you use one at a time, and then this breaks the cycle and reduces the risk of infection as well. Another thing that you can do is contribute to the recording of incidences of these diseases and deaths that are occurring. And so if you do see birds that look like they're suffering from disease, they often just look a bit fluffed up, a bit ill, don't move very far, maybe even have a bit of water around the base of their bill. Those are sort of classic signs of disease like trichomoniasis. Then head over to the Garden Wildlife Health website online, which is a collaboration between the British Trust for Ornithology, the RSPB, FrogLife and Zoological Society of London, where you can report your records and really help to build up a picture of how diseases like this and illnesses are affecting our garden wildlife populations. So yeah, please help out with that, and thank you very much.
Very, very, very important message there from Ben. So if you're out in your garden over the weekend, perhaps think about cleaning those feeders, because it's really, really important.
I don't hold much hope for our feeders. If you're going to clean them with the same regularity as you do the washing up, they won't be done for some considerable time.
Hang on a minute. Who cooks your meals every single day? Anyway, let's not get into this.
That's not true.
That is true, pretty much.
Couple of class pastas this week.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yesterday we had something very exciting happen. We had a new arrival. Now, our neighbour Linda has some sheep which are in the field next to our house. We knew that we thought two were pregnant, and yesterday we found our female was in labour. So we went and watched, and we sat back and made sure that we were on hand to help if we were needed. And she gave birth to this beautiful little male lamb. Have a look at this clip.
Born sheep, they are. They're born sheep, yeah. So they're quite a rare breed. They don't need shearing, and they sort of shear themselves by leaving their coat all over the bushes.
It scares me sometimes. I don't know what it is, and then I just think, oh God, are they okay?
And they're very friendly, and they're small, and they're kept in the orchard in the adjacent field here to keep the grass down beneath the orchard, which helps in some places. absolute, yeah, what a treat that was.
It was a very special thing to see. It's yeah, I mean, it's always wonderful, isn't it, when you kind of see an animal give birth like that, and it's so precious. The fact that, you know, the lamb came and within seconds she was licking it, bonding with it, and then of course it was up on its feet, which is just remarkable.
Well, it's very quick, very quick.
Very quick and very special. So we have a little well, I don't know, a competition we're going to run, which is called #Name That Lamb. Name that lamb. So what we're asking you to do is to think of some names for this gorgeous little male. Here we go. Think of some names for this little man. He's got a little bit of a black nozzle, just to give you some details. Black nozzle. He's quite vocal. Just a bit of details about his personality, if you wanted to incorporate that into your thoughts and suggestions.
Just one thing, like not Lammy McLam.
I don't see what's wrong with that.
Lammy McLam face will not go through.
Right, I'm in favour.
It's got to be a little bit more original than
I'm in favour. But anyway, so please put your comments on below, and we will pick out the 4 best ones, and then we'll put it to a vote for you guys to choose later on as well. So on Monday. So we will name that lamb.
Name that lamb. And whilst we're talking about comments, very pleased now that we can join Lindsay Chapman, who's somewhere sunny by the looks of it. Lindsay, look, feel the envy radiating from the south of England. What are you doing up there with your shirt on?
Hello, it is absolutely glorious just outside Manchester this morning. We're keeping all the sun up here in the north at the moment. It's lovely to see you all. The stream has been really busy this morning. We had 100 comments in the first minute. So, you know, absolutely brilliant to see everybody again this morning. On the lamb, I've gone for Sir Lamb-a-Lot.
I like it.
That's nice. That's nice. And many more suggestions are coming in this morning. A couple of hellos to Jill in the Highlands. If you're watching in Aberdeen, Sherwood Forest, the Netherlands, and the mighty Bridlington back in East Yorkshire, my homelands. Lovely to have you all along this morning as ever. Clive is watching in Shropshire, watching blue ticks taking nesting material into his bird box, which is just outside his window. So that's brilliant. Got a couple of birthdays. Chris, did you have a birthday shout out?
Yeah, Jacqueline Smith is a lady who's been watching all of our little broadcasts, and she's 58 today, and we're really pleased to say happy birthday, Jacqueline, and thanks for all of your support. I hope you have a great day. I don't know where you are, Jacqueline, but obviously if you're in the north, it's going to be a sunnier day than it is down here in the south. But either way, have a great birthday.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a brilliant birthday. Also to Elaine Bird, excellent name. It's your birthday. And we should mention producer Fabian as well, who was 21 on Sunday. So, you know, it's important that the world knows this. He's doing an amazing job. Many people talking about Stephen Moss this morning. Carolyn says he's an absolute legend, really enjoying the advice. Lindsay Loader says that Lindsay keeps lots of photographs as a record, so that is another way of doing it. Elsa keeps a log every day, and Sally says this is a really good idea at the moment if you're homeschooling to maybe get your kids to do a bit of nature writing as well. On nature books, my recommendation would be Why the Whales Came by Michael Morpurgo. I just think it is a stunning book. It's a children's book, but anybody can read it, and it's got such emotion and feeling in it. That would be my recommendation. I actually got in touch with our group, with the sort of wider Twitter audience this week, to ask about nature diaries, and particularly about when people have seen their first swallow this year. Megs and Chris, have you seen a swallow? I haven't seen one yet.
Not yet.
I tell you what we did have though.
Yeah.
Not yesterday, the day before. We had cuckoo here.
All afternoon.
So that was really exciting.
You are very lucky to hear that. I actually checked in with my mum. She's been keeping a nature diary for the last 25 years of where we live, where I grew up back in East Yorkshire. And we used to hear cuckoo every year. We haven't heard one for 11 years now back in East Yorkshire, which is pretty hard. Her average for the swallow, though, over 25 years is the 22nd of April. So they haven't seen one yet, but loads of you have, including people from Cornwall all the way up to Fife. I think the earliest was the 18th of March, which was down in Cornwall that I heard. That came in from Henry. So it's fab just to hear about those swallows, and I want to see one. Right, guys, I've got loads of questions for you. So let's start with Jack Johnson. Going to play you a little clip here. This is a dunnock that he has had visiting his garden. He says it comes to the fence. It's quite agitated and frisky. It's been doing these sort of moves every day. Do you have any idea what's going on?
Part of its display, I think. Dunnocks are, renowned for being boring little brown birds, but they're far from that. Firstly, they've got a beautiful song, and it's a chance for us, whilst we're self-isolating, to engage with them. They're relatively common garden birds across the UK, so listen out for the Dunnock song. It's much better than the Dunnock's appearance. Second thing is they make a most beautiful nest and lay the most beautiful, little blue eggs in the nest. And then thirdly, their behaviour is extraordinary. So they often do this display under the hedge. It's much more difficult to see. So it's quite unusual that this bird is on top of a fence. They're normally a lot more skulking. Sometimes people describe them as the bird mouse of the garden because they're scuttling around in the undergrowth. So it's unusual to see them on top of the fence like this. But they do all sorts of bizarre things. And the most unusual thing that they do is that the male dunnocks practice something called cloacal pecking, which is all about competition for fertilizing the eggs of the female that they're paying attention to. And you can Google that and find out a little bit more about it. But yeah, it's part of their display, but unusual to see it on a fence top.
Thank you. Do you have any tips to tell the difference between a house sparrow, a dunnock, and a tree sparrow? Because they look pretty similar.
Yeah, well, tree sparrows, you're lucky to see them these days. They're a bird that's declined by, I think, 90% in some areas. Where they do occur, they occur in colonies, a bit like house sparrows. And they have a little black spot on their cheek. And they have the males in breeding plumage have a black spot on their cheek and a purely chestnut crown. The house sparrow has a black bib, the male house sparrow. The females, it's a bit more difficult to separate them, but there's always males around as they are very sociable birds. So you can do it by identifying the males. And of course, those are birds which are hanging around the eaves, typically in suburban areas. They certainly have been prospering in urban and suburban areas up until relatively recently. And then the dunnock is altogether different. It's not actually a sparrow at all. It's a type of bird called an assenter, and it's got a much thinner bill. It spends a lot more time eating insects, whereas the other two birds are principally granivorous with a much stronger bill.
It's quite round as well. The dunnock is quite round, isn't it? It's able to flick its tail feathers up. Great, which is how I always identify it.
Yeah, and it's on the ground a lot of the time. They've got like a sort of ashy blue cheek, so they're a much less striking bird the dunnock. But as I say, hedge sparrow, really, they should be called hedge accenter.
There you go. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Amanda's been on. She says she's seen a dunnock displaying on her fence. So look at you if you're seeing that. While we're on birds, this is a classic. Alice Hewitt, can birds sneeze?
Yes. Oh, they do. I've been sneezed on by any number of birds. When I used to keep birds like, kestrels and owls and so forth when I was a teenager, I'd frequently get sneezed on by them. And yes, they do sneeze. And they also sneeze sometimes, or they allow their noses to run deliberately. And we were talking about this on one of our earlier broadcasts with things like fulmar, where they're actually using their nasal mucus to discharge excess salt from their bodies, and they have glands at the base of their eye, and basically their snot runs down their bill and then drips off at the end. And so, yes, birds can very definitely produce nasal mucus, and sometimes they can expel it with ferocity in the form of a sneeze.
Excellent, excellent. While we're talking about mucus and noses and mouths and beaks and bills, I'm going to show you some fantastic clips. They're just going to run at the side. The first one is a great crested grebe, one of my favourites. I love these birds, eating a very large fish. Almost looks too big for it to eat, actually. How on earth is it doing that?
Well, they do have a very wide gape, but you see, the thing with the grebe is it has a long, narrow, pointed bill for seizing the fish. It doesn't have a bill which is suitable for breaking it up. So they have to swallow their prey whole. Normally they feed on much smaller items, not just fish, but crustaceans and other invertebrates that they find in the water. But occasionally, of course, their eyes get a bigger view of their stomach than their mouth allows. And it gets it down, but typically they're feeding on smaller things. But they've got no choice but swallow it whole. That bill's not, you can't peck a fish to pieces with that bill and into morsels that will be more bite-sized.
It's a wonderful piece of footage. It came in from Bev on Facebook. And then the Wildlife Trust, they have a little clip of a great black-backed gull. This is just stunning, if you're into this kind of thing whilst eating your breakfast this morning. This is it, devouring a rabbit. This went viral. I mean, that rabbit looks too big for that bird.
It's quite impressive. And I mean, with these gulls, they will eat pretty much anything that is of the same size or smaller than their own body size. And if it is slightly too big, they'll put it in their mouth and they'll shake their head around and tear it off into two different chunks. Huge gape as well. And these great black gulls, they are ferocious predators. They're not like raptors. They don't have these amazing talons and the tip on their bill, which they can use to tear off flesh. They use their sheer strength and ferocity to really attack these kind of rabbits and smaller mammals and things. And fish as well. Fish is a great part of the diet of these birds too. So they are absolute ferocious predators. And yeah, it's quite an amazing footage.
Do you know one of the neatest things I've seen those birds do is that they will catch puffins in flight as they return to their burrows. And then, because they don't want to eat all of the puffin's feathers and their stiff little feathery wings, they have developed the capacity to turn the puffin inside out. So they effectively skin them so that they only eat the body of the puffin. And you can find the sort of the inside out puffin skin on the top of the cliff. What about that?
I had no idea that they did that. That is
pretty cool.
Quite a talent.
I bought one of those puffins home and I had it in a box for years, but unfortunately the moths got it, and it got eaten.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Where did you keep that?
In a little box in the wardrobe.
What?
It's all I've got. Don't go in my wardrobe.
It doesn't surprise me that the end of that story is, and I took one home and have it in a box. Just
you know what? I love how I'm only finding out this stuff now. I mean, I've learned pretty quick, like the freezer, all these kind of places, it's best not to look inside. You never know what's going to be there.
You don't want to look in our freezer at the moment.
Don't.
I'll tell you something. It's not peas and veg. I can tell you now.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question because I'm very worried about what your drawers are full of. Patricia on Facebook, while we're talking about digestion, we had just brilliant questions coming in about bats. Do bats have a modified digestive system so that they can eat and digest upside down?
That's an interesting thing. I mean, bats will eat on the wing. That's the first thing to say. So when they're out foraging, they're not catching the food. Some catch the food and then hang up and eat it. If it's larger items like beetles and large moths, so then they will catch it in the air. Sometimes they transfer it, or actually sometimes they catch it in their tail membrane, transfer it to their mouth, and then they'll fly and hang up and eat it there. Other than that, if they're eating small prey, midges, mosquitoes, those sorts of things, they eat on the wing. So yes, I guess they do, because they will obviously eat hanging upside down. The one thing to say is, of course, that in the winter when they're hibernating and they're not eating, their digestive system. Because when you hibernate, I mean, I've never hibernated myself, but if I were to, and I've been tempted on a number of occasions, that you don't want any food in your stomach because it's going to ferment and effectively go off during the course of the winter. So most of those sorts of animals try to hibernate on an empty stomach. So they evacuate their bowels and their bladder. So effectively their alimentary tract is dry for their hibernation period.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you again for all the questions that are coming in. Keep them coming in. I'm Lindsay_Chapman on Twitter, and I feel that we've cleared up quite a few of your eating questions this morning. Upside down or not, enjoy your Friday and your breakfast. Bye for now.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks.
See ya.
I feel like we were going for a cute theme today, and that's quickly diverged, doesn't it?
I don't know about that. Okay, let's do the quiz reveal. Okay, Phil Barnett's design of the day. What was this one? Did anyone get it right next?
We had lots of people getting this right, and I was quite surprised. I didn't expect, it would be too obvious. But anyway, Billy and his dad on Facebook, Vivian, Ruth, Emma, Maya, Graham, Colin, Cara. Well done, everyone. This list goes on, actually. Twitter, Paula, Dave, Red, Ashy, Mostly Wild, Liz, Stargazer, John, YouTube, Oliver, Alicia, Sal, Darren, Shane. Hi, Shane. How you doing?
Shane's back.
Hi,
Not any
Shane.
good at skulls.
Good to see you. Hope you had a good week. Andrew and Michelle. So well done to everyone who got that right.
Yeah, the design is a simplified version of the cap of the fly agaric mushroom. The fly agaric mushrooms, that one which is famous because it appears in just about every fairy tale illustration. It emerges in September to October, normally under birch trees. And the spots on the top are not pigment, they're fragments of the cap which had previously enclosed the mushroom part of that fruiting body. And as they it meant they stick to the top of it. The name fly agaric comes from the fact that it was once used as an insecticide. So people would take the mushroom and they would pulp it in milk and leave it in saucers on their windowsills. The flies would be drawn to it and they would drink the milk and it would stupefy them and they would fall in the milk and die, because it is quite a powerfully hallucinogenic mushroom, but not one that's in a pleasant way. It's toxic to humans, can do you enormous harm if you eat it. Other things will eat it. Things like obviously deer will eat it, squirrels and small other rodents will nibble it, and so will lots of mollusks, of course. And one last thing, which is one of my favourite things, is you may have heard of the berserkers, the go berserk, that expression. And this comes from a group of Norse warriors who were said to go into battle in front of all of the other warriors, wielding their axes, men of enormous stature, and they would go berserk, literally just mad. And it's thought that they drank extracts of fly agaric to get them into this trance-like state where they were fearless and would go into battle. So that, going berserk comes from drinking an extract of fly agaric mushroom.
Fascinating. Who would have thought that?
So there's always something lurking in the bowels of my brain.
Honestly, I was just thinking, listening to you then, your brain is just a fascinating place.
Is it really?
It is a fascinating place.
Yeah. Not you want to go in every corner. Some of those corners are like you don't want to go in.
It's like the drawers in the house.
It's like
anyway.
Like the freezer. Yeah.
Anyway, so coming up next week, we have got a fantastic lineup of guests for you. The wonderful Nick Baker. We've got Lizzie Daly, Ruth Peacey, Kate Humble, and Luke Massey will all be joining us to give you little snippets of the wildlife in their garden and what they're up to, which is great.
We'll be back on Monday. We're not doing Saturday and Sunday. We have trouble with our bandwidth. Lots of people having trouble with their bandwidth. I mean, we need more bandwidth, don't we? That's what we need. But we're going to leave you with this little clip, which Matt Moran has sent in. It's the third of our cute animals, poodle, lamb, and this one. Well, I don't know if it tops the poodle.
Oh, but it is very cute.
We're going to have more from Matt next week, but these fox cubs we're going to leave you with. So we'll see you on Monday. Enjoy these. They are simply divine. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good weekend.